Hi, this is Roy Worley. Welcome to the interview show that brings on guests from all walks of life. Yeah, it's here that they tell their stories and delve a little deeper into their lives to see what got them where they are. So grab a drink, have a seat, and relax, because this is the Leo Effect.
So you finally made a name for yourself. Congratulations! But how do you get your name out to the world? Turn to WorldStar PR. The caring, honest, and invested team at WorldStar PR will give you maximum exposure through podcasts, TV, radio, amazing press releases, and red carpet events. They'll ensure that you are worldwide. Jimmy Starr, entertainment guru, and Eileen Shapiro, rockstar journalist, will give you the world. So come join the likes of legendary actor Ron Russell, iconic musicians Scott Page and Fred Schneider, world-class designer Sue Wong, TV personality Mickey Burns, and so many more. Check them out on Facebook or on their website, jimmystarsworld.com/WorldStarPR. WorldStar PR, where the world revolves around you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the Leo Effects. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. I have a few, questions about what it is that she does, because as far as I can remember back, I haven't had a guest on that does this particular career. So we're gonna delve into that. But first, I'd like to introduce the guest for this evening, and please allow me to welcome on the show Sheila Conlin. How are you?
Hello, Ray. I am doing fabulous, and thank you so much for inviting me on your show.
Absolutely. Thank you for accepting the invite and coming on. We're going to talk about everything that you do and even a little bit more about what drives you to do what you do. And I think we're going to have a good time with it.
Oh, yes. I love it. I love it.
So I guess the first thing we should talk about is what it is that you actually do. And, there's a lot of different things that get brought up when you go to your website and kind of start clicking around. And I've been perusing everything, and I could use a little more clarification, I think. And one of the biggest things that kind of caught my eye is that you were a driving force for creating the criteria and, the different ways that people cast reality TV.
Yes. And actually, yes, that's very, very good, because I guess we could start with that because, well, let me see. Let me give you a little insight prior to.
Oh, yeah, please do.
Television. So prior to reality television, I was an agent, a talent agent, and worked a lot with comedians and musicians. I helped Harry Connick Jr.'s career in the very beginning. A lot of the big, or the comedians, it was the heyday. I was Phyllis Diller's tour manager before I became an agent. And so I was really immersed in comedy when it was at the turning point of a lot of these comedians getting their own sitcoms. So it was a fascinating time. And then with the musicians, it was also breaking a lot of into their careers or reinventing their careers, like I did the Johnny Cash album with Rick Rubin. And so that was super exciting. But then, after about 4 or 5 years, I'm trying to remember, it's about 5 years as an agent, I wanted to venture out and see what it was like to produce. So I started producing what they called clip shows back then. TV's Greatest Sitcom Moments, 50 Years of Funny Females, Oops, the World's Funniest, even a crazy show called When Animals Attack. And
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite shows, and that became like a little cult favorite. But I was known for like the queen of clip shows, and it was so much fun. But then all of a sudden, while we were doing those, this little thing called reality TV was creeping up. And so, it was on the ground floor, literally, as it started to happen. And it was crazy. The head of Fox at the time was a guy named Mike Darnell. And I was doing most of these clip shows for him on Fox. And he came to me and he said, hey, you used to find people with talent as a talent agent. Do you think you can find real people that'll want to be on television? And we had done a little bit of that, like on the show When Animals Attack, because it was real people stories. And, a little bit similar to like Unsolved Mysteries, how they did stories about these real people and their incidences. And when animals attack, we were interviewing real people and recreating their stories. And I said to him, I said, absolutely, I'm sure I could figure it out. And so from there, he had a show called Bachelorettes in Alaska. And it was one of the first reality shows on TV. I believe it even was on the air before Survivor, which typically Survivor was the biggest reality show, recognizable
Yeah.
on CBS. But we had done Bachelorettes in Alaska on Fox, I believe, right before. Then after that came The Bachelor. And then from there, I worked with Fox on, all their shows that started to happen: Nanny 911, Paradise Hotel, Hell's Kitchen, Kitchen Nightmares. I mean, it just went on and on and on. But what we were doing in the beginning was really how to figure out to put real people on TV in either a competition situation, finding love, self-help, all these different areas. And it was like, okay, so how are we going to make this appeal to real people? And because it's not scripted, we're not writing a script, we're not plugging them, and they're not playing anybody but themselves. And it all depends on what the show is about. So Bachelorettes in Alaska was about, were women in the US tired of finding or not being able to find love and a good relationship, a solid relationship. And so it was like, okay, so how would we go about doing that? And so I always work backwards, forwards. So it was like, okay, well, what's the end result? Are they going to meet a man? Are they required to get married? How is this going to work? And it was so much fun because it was very creative with how they were creating, how the creation of these shows were coming about, right? So sure, Bachelorettes in Alaska, and take a bunch of single women, bring them to Alaska, and see if they can meet these men that are sort of untapped in Alaska. And so my wheels were turning, and I'm going, well, of course I can figure this out. I'm going to do it very strategically, sort of like a marketing plan. Where in the U.S. are the most single women? Where in the U.S. are single women that are really looking for love, trying to really break it down. And because back then it was very specific that we had a cast across the United States. And so just pretty much narrowed the criteria down and honing into different pockets of cities and finding women, interviewing them. And if they would take a chance, if there was that right guy in Alaska, would they fly to Alaska, take the chance to meet a few of them? And if he was the right guy, would you, be interested in marrying him? And so through that process, I had to come up with, first of all, finding them, how to entice them. Why would they want to come out to talk to me and my staff of producers? And then how to interview them. What kind of questions do you ask? How do you know someone's being authentic? How do you know someone doesn't want to be on TV or they're fake or whatever? So the fun thing is you can figure out through interviewing who a person is, but then I decided, I'm like, well, there really should be another criteria layer here. Maybe we need to do a background check. And the network was like, yeah, we should do that. I go, you're taking people out of their hometown, you're flying them somewhere, you're putting them with a bunch of other people, and you're going to sequester them, meaning they can't talk to anybody back at home, whatever. So what if they, might be a little crazy? Should we do a psychological evaluation? And it was like, yeah, that's a good idea. And the criminals, so just, so we know we don't have someone who, has a long list of, felonies or things like that and wanted by the law, right? And then the third element was, I thought, well, of course, we got to make sure people are in physical condition. That's a given, because if we're going to have them do different things like, out in the cold weather or, dog sledding or whatever, as long as there's no medical conditions. But then I thought, okay, this is also a show about meeting a guy, starting a relationship. And I thought, well, would some women actually try and get away with something. And what I mean by that is, let's say someone was pregnant and maybe didn't know who the guy was, or or they did but didn't want to be with them. A woman could potentially come on the show and say she's not pregnant, right? And then all of a sudden, maybe sleep with someone on the show and then go, oh my God, now I'm pregnant. So anyway, that was taking a little bit extreme, but we went as far as, for those type of shows, we really have to make sure someone isn't pregnant, right?
Right.
And so that's how that whole vetting process began. It was a contract, which had to differ from how we did contracts for like game show contestants or hosts, because hosts were really like actors in a sense, but they specialized in, being the thread or the voice of the show, and they were their own personality. And that was like hiring an actor anyway. It was through an agent. It was a contract. They come in and do a show. But how do you get real people in, and how are you going to turn that into a contract? And so that began that process, creating the contract, doing a background check, doing a psychological evaluation, and a medical evaluation. And that's what I ended up calling the vetting process. So I worked closely with the business affairs team at Fox, and they were like, this is fantastic. I did this whole binder and everything. And they're like, it's great. So eventually, we ended up sharing it with all the networks, because at that time, all the networks were trying to get on board with doing this thing called reality. And so we decided to share it across the playing field, because it should be somewhat of a uniform type system, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then basically that's how it started. Each network adopted the contractual, and then the vetting process, background, psych, and medical.
Wow. I never would have guessed it was like that in depth. Like, that's crazy. Yeah. Have you ever had anybody still slip through the cracks and not work out?
Well, good question. Sometimes there were things that would come up, but we do this thing called a risk assessment. So we want everybody to tell the truth and to be honest. And we always say, it's not, we don't really care if you have done certain things, or, this happened in your life, as long as right now you're an upstanding citizen and, running a great life. So yes, things did, but not on my watch, I could say.
Okay.
And Fox was one of the more stricter networks in the very beginning. So we really took took a lot of attention and care in taking care of these real people we were putting on TV. And, and also for the safety of the other people on the show and for the network. So we did a pretty darn good job of all of that. As reality television grew, of course, as in any business, people were trying to cut corners, save money, do it differently. And then, had people that weren't really as dedicated or, focused on making sure all the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted, right? So, of course, then things like that would slip through the cracks. So it did happen on a lot of different shows. There's a lot of them that, there are a lot of shows. There was a couple of people that committed suicide. There was, after the show, there was, right. There's all kinds of stories, right? Or there was this thing they found out. But I have to say on, the majority of my shows, we were pretty buttoned up and we were really good. So that was great. And that's really how it began for me. It was a process for me that I could utilize my creative sense and work with the creative producers on this great, fantastical idea that they came up with, and fun, but also what is needed to make sure everybody's protected. Gotcha. And more because if I had to sell this to real people to do, there had to be some upside for them in experience, maybe a prize or, something. And so it was fun for me to be able to take, like I said, the creative side, but then my analytical, critical thinking side, legal sense that I think is just inherent. And to be able to have a job, a position that I could use both. And it's been fascinating.
Yeah. Where did the Conlin company come in all of this?
So what happened was, when that started, I was working for a company called LMNO Productions. And I was head of talent, director of talent and research. And we were doing shows like Guinness World Records prime time and a lot of those clip shows. And then when this started to go into the reality world, after I came up with this whole system and structure of interviewing. Then the other part, the creative part, was the interview process, how to film them, how to edit it, how to present it to the producers, how to present the producer selects to the network, and then to go from there, fly them out to do the vetting process and meet in person. So after I'd started that, then we did another show called Celebrity Boot Camp, Boot Camp and then Celebrity Boot Camp. And then Bachelor was happening at ABC, and then there was another one. Then I think that our next one at Fox was Mr. Personality. So all of a sudden, it was like, okay, we have all these shows. We got to find the people, the cast, da 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 da. And I decided, I'm like, wow, I could go off on my own instead of just working for one production company, since many other production companies were starting to do this. I could be the go-to person and do all their casting. And, it's crazy. My title back in those days is casting director, and I still get that title from time to time. But what I did was way more involved than what you would think of as a casting director in the scripted world, TV and film. So it was a much bigger job description, if you will. Mm-hmm. So what I did is I had about $5 in my pocket. And I was making money, but, still not a lot. I decided to open up my own office, and I decided I could do 2 or 3 or 4 of these shows at the same time.
Oh,
and
okay.
I did. And I started, like I said, with very little money. I rented a space at one of my friends' office building. And then after being there for about 10 months, I found my own space, signed a lease, and jumped off the cliff and went, okay, we're in business. And at that time I would do, the development meetings. I would do the budgets. I would do working with the team, of course, setting up the interview. And each show is different. So lots of work, but I was doing a lot of that, and then hiring my staff, casting producers. Our casting people we would pack up camera equipment, and then they would go out to different regions and interview people. So it was a big operation. It turned out even bigger and bigger. At one time, I think I was doing 4 network shows, casting them, and also first run shows. So, developing on how this is all going to happen, and also doing other development stuff. So it was for a good, oh my goodness, like 10, 15 years. It was crazy. And I was working 24/7.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it, with all those different hats you had to wear.
Yeah, and then eventually, I would train people that I hired, and it was great. A lot of I call them kids that I had in the beginning have gone on to be producers, editors. Just awesome. So it was also creating new careers for people. But I ended up training editors, like I said, the casting producers, line producers, production managers, because the casting element within reality TV was like a complete division on its own, and we worked closely with executive producers and the network, because the casting is what was going to shape the show. And a lot of times when we would get into the casting, the twist or the format of the show would change because of what we would discover. And we're like, oh my gosh, there's people that do this, or this is how this is shaping up, and we got to do it this way now. So that beginning process was super crucial. It still is today on how these shows operate. It's all about the cast.
Yeah, I'd believe that. Especially with reality TV.
Yeah, if you could have the greatest format, but if you had uninteresting people and just non-charismatic, not authentic, people that you just can't stop watching, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, kind of talking on those bounds, I guess, you also have a thing called breaking into reality. What is that all about?
So after I would say that was after like about my 15-year mark, maybe even close to 20. I'm trying to remember when I started that. I decided, I was like, wow, I had so many great hit shows on the air, had launched so many careers for people. A show like Hell's Kitchen, a lot of those people that wanted to be a chef, were line cooks, prep cooks. Some were dishwashers wanting to get behind that line. And they were the underdogs, they were going to work in kitchens for a long time, hoping to have an opportunity to have one of their own restaurants. And so through this show, Hell's Kitchen, we were able to launch people's career to get them their own restaurant or to work with Gordon Ramsay. Kitchen Nightmares was like really helping people turn around their family mom and pop restaurant. The Swan was changing people's lives. Nanny 911, changing families. So when I was looking back at all the shows that I did, I was like, wow, we should really talk about, like, revisit these people. Where are they now? What are they doing? And how did reality TV, affect their life? How did it change their life? Did it enhance it? What did they learn? And my big thing was, it was really, reality TV was really set up to really be an experience and to give people courage to try something new, to go after a dream, to go after a challenge. And it was really more about 5 minutes of fame, not 15 minutes of fame. It was really just something to launch and spiral yourself into the next great big thing for yourself, and not so much to become a star, right?
Mm-hmm.
To be like, you were going to become famous, but it was something that was giving real people, ordinary people, to do extraordinary things. And so I decided, let's do like a radio podcast thing, and it was on video too. And where I interviewed people that I had on shows, my shows, and then also from other shows as well, to talk about their life and how reality changed their life.
Oh,
Good
that's
or bad.
cool.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Have you ever encountered a situation, you watch like America's Got Talent, for example, and you see they have like those people that come on and they just immediately buzz them off because they're just terrible. Like whatever they're doing is terrible. Have you ever encountered a situation where somebody came in for the interview and you're just like, oh my goodness, why did this person even come in?
Well, yes, that happens a lot. But to me, I always say people are my business. And I first and foremost applaud people to take that first step just to come in and do an interview or just to show up. What I would always say is, like, just make sure that you're showing up for the right show for you. Do your research. Make sure this is what you want to do. So yes, the times when you're going, why are you here? I was like, you have no desire to become a chef, or you have no desire to do this. Why are you here? You just want to be famous. You just want this. So yeah, a lot of times that's happened. And, you still go through with the interview. And then typically they want to go on to the next level or next round of casting. But other times you're looking at them and you're going, okay, they may not be right for this show, but you never know where they may fit in when you have another show down the road. Or is it someone to create a show around? That's happened a couple times too, going, oh my God, this person or this family is so interesting. There should be something more about them. One case in point, there was a show I did, and it was on VH1, and it was called It Girls. And it was about these girls that were, daughters of famous people in Hollywood or New York, and kind of their lifestyle and how they hung out together as a group of friends. It was kind of a spin-off of the Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie Simple Life. So it was like, okay, who are another group of friends, girlfriends that live this kind of cool lifestyle? And so we were developing that. And that one I was executive producer on. I remember I was like, okay, let's see if we can really make this work. And we had Carolyn D'Amore. I think Kimberly Stewart was going to be on it, but she didn't. Rod Stewart's daughter. And Sarah Howard. Her father was a famous writer. And then they had this girl named Kim Kardashian. And she hung out with them. And they were all also friends with Paris and Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
So we kept interviewing Kim. And she wasn't as crazy and outlandish as the other girls, or wild. And some of my partners were like, yeah, she's okay, but, let's see if they have some other friends, because she's not that exciting. And I kept going, I go, right, but they all don't have to be the same. There can be one girl that doesn't dance on tables. There could be, doesn't do this. And I go, and she's stunning. I go, there's something about her. I go, I just can't put my finger on it yet, but it's like, I just don't want to take my eyes off of her. And I'm intrigued. And so I kept interviewing her more and more, kind of probed to see what's under her. It's like, well, come on, let's get this out of you. But she was basically the same person every time we interviewed her.
Oh.
But one day she came in and she goes, hey, my mom got a call from this other company. I can't really pronounce their name. And she goes, but they want to do a show about my sisters and me. And I'm like, I'm like, okay. And and I go, well, I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, that might be a good idea because I'm having a hard time convincing my partners that you should be on the show with your girlfriends. And so, I ended up finding out who it was. And I'm like, oh, Buna Murray, they're really good. They did The Real World. And I'm like, okay, I'm wondering what they're seeing here, where they're going with this. And so eventually I said to her, look, if you have an opportunity and it's real to go do another show with your sisters, I said, I think you should. I go, I would like you to be on my show. Of course, I wasn't telling her that my partners didn't want her to be on.
Right.
But I was very honest with her in that regard. Not 100% honest, but I was giving it was like, hey, if you have another opportunity, I think you should look into it, and I think you should do it. And sure enough, she did. And we all know about Keeping Up with the Kardashians.
Right. Yeah.
Became one of the biggest things. And so, yeah, to me, it's like, I am that way when I see the talent. And if I feel they're not right for the show, there was another one I had on Hell's Kitchen. He was amazing. He was an older guy and he really wanted to be a chef. And he did lack in his skills, but he had a kind of a funny, quirky personality. And it was very entertaining in his interview. Not entertaining because that was his personality. He was entertaining because he had this kind of quirky stuff. And I started to feel like, I go, God, I think everybody's more like laughing at him. And oh my God, wouldn't this be funny if Gordon laughed at him that way? Oh, wouldn't this be funny if Gordon? And I was like, I really started thinking, I go, this guy is so serious. And I don't think he could handle being made fun of. This is like something that means a lot to him. And he wants to, impress his dad and all this stuff, right? So I finally said to the producers, I go, I say, you guys cannot have him. You cannot put him on the show because I know what you're going to do. And it's not right. This guy, it'll crush. You will crush his dreams. You will just take him down. Whereas there's other people that can be quirky, a little bit different, wacky, and it's okay. They can roll with it. And that's just fine for them and their makeup, their personality and everything. And it works. But with this guy, I remember I just had to put my foot down. I was like, no, we can't do it. And so twofold on that, I had to break his heart that he wasn't going to move on. But I felt like, it was better because he wasn't going to last very long anyway.
Yeah.
And I just felt it wasn't right for him to go through that.
Gotcha. Well, it's very nice of you to do that. I mean, it's better to just have it end that way rather than how it could have ended. So that was very nice of you.
And I always say I kind of wear hats, like many hats, like a therapist,
yeah,
a mom, a psychic. It's like all these different hats because you really have to tap in. And I, to me, I want everyone that's going to be on these shows to have the best experience possible or to really learn something about themselves, and also to know what they're getting into. So yeah, I really take a lot of pride and care of all these people that are coming on TV for at least in my camp. And then I always will hold their hand through the process and make sure they're fine afterwards, because it's a new thing. It's different.
Yeah, that's so awesome. With these last few minutes of the show, I'd like to open it up to you and you can let people know, the different kind of social medias and your websites so they can go and follow along with everything you've got going on.
Oh, great. So, first of all, I've got a new show that's out on Netflix. It's called Skin Decision, and it's doing really well. It's with Dr. Sheila Nazarian and Nurse Jamie. And I love it, and great stories on there and really helping people out. It's either cut or not cut. So, check that out on Netflix. And my website is www.theconlincompany.com. Otherwise, you can reach me on Instagram at ConlinCoTV. Same with Twitter at ConlinCoTV. And then Facebook is The Conlin Company.
There you go. Nice and easy. And of course, I'm going to provide links to that in the show description so everybody can, just click the link and off they go.
Oh, great. I love it. Well, anybody can reach out if they have questions. And I read all my emails and I answer people. And, like I said, people are my business and I love what I do.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Sheila, for coming on the show and talking to me today. You've been an absolute pleasure. I just had a great time listening to your stories.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if anything new ever comes up, make sure to hit me up. I'd like to hear about the next big thing coming out.
There is going to be a next big thing, but I can't talk about it yet. But I will be sure to let you know as soon as I can talk about it.
Fantastic. Those darn NDAs. Well, I appreciate it. And I appreciate all the listeners who tuned in to check out the show today. Make sure to go over and check out the socials for the Conlin Company. You're going to want to follow along because, like we just said, stuff is coming. Thank you all very much and have a wonderful evening. We'll see you all next time.
All right, honey.
Oh, now that was an awesome interview. Thanks so much for listening. You all are so great. And don't forget to head to Facebook, Insta, and Twitter and follow The Leo Effects. If you want to hear some comedy and ridiculous voices, check out Shattered Dungeons on YouTube and all other places podcasts can be heard. And you'll hear me voicing crazy characters, usually pretty terribly. So thank you so much. You all are the absolute best. And we will see you all on the next episode.